So in my review of the M1 iPad Pro, I mentioned that I refused to buy the same keyboard that I am reviewing today. The many glances that I gave it, I thought that it looked too thin and flimsy to work on my lap well, but especially too thin and bare bones to be worth $350. Well, I found myself having to buy one, unfortunately, because my bridge keyboard was taking too long to arrive, and in fact, it still hasn't, and the plastic one that I bought before was just too clunky and kind of uncomfortable after a little while. So I will be taking the iPad overseas with me, and I need to be able to do work on the go, whether it's typing out scripts or editing videos. So this is when I'm stuck having to get this one, and I have a lot to say here, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we continue, don't forget that I have a Twitch channel that you can go ahead and follow me on for live microphone reviews and much more than that. But you're also going to find my Instagram and a link to the Tech Summit Discord in the description. So come join the community because it is a pretty cool one. We've also opened up a Patreon as of late where if you join, you'll be automatically entered to win one tech gadget every month in our exclusive giveaways. Details to that are going to be down below. Don't forget to check out the description for everything. Now let's get right into the video. So I bought this used because I needed to save money on it, but the packaging arrived in great condition, and inside you are going to find the keyboard cover itself and instructions, as well as warranty information, but that's about it. The exterior design is actually pretty unique. It's super thin, as I expected, but it does have this soft touch rubber to it that feels pretty nice, to be honest. It's got a USB-C port for charging, and this is actually for charging the iPad directly, since it connects to the iPad through the pins on the back, and not over Bluetooth. It is going to be probably, at least I expected it to be, the most battery efficient keyboard for the iPad Pro. I thought it would show maybe just a little more. We'll talk about that soon. And one thing that you will notice about this is actually going to be the hinge, which is a lot stronger than I expected. In spite of how thin it is, this is a heavy keyboard case. That does add a noticeable amount of weight, but it's not much worse than before, either when you combine the two. It does feel better than I expected. I had to say, this thing actually feels more premium than I gave it credit for. There are only going to be two positions, however, for propping up the iPad, and I found that only one of them is actually useful. But I will say this, the folding mechanism on it is very strong, and I am genuinely surprised that it can hold up the iPad this well. But I do still have some gripes that I will share with you all a little bit later in this review. Most importantly though, let's go ahead and talk about the keys and the trackpad, beginning with the keyboard portion. This keyboard is actually pretty good. The keys are nicely spread out, and there is a decent amount of travel on these. Doing long typing sessions, I would say, can be very enjoyable actually, and very efficient as a result, with very few typos to speak of. I'm genuinely impressed with the performance here, as I can seriously type on this thing for a pretty long while, working on long scripts like this one. This entire script was actually typed on that keyboard, on the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro, and I enjoyed almost every minute of it, quite frankly. So this is why investing in a good keyboard is so wise, huh? And yes, this does actually work quite well on your lap, even in a moving vehicle or airplane. I've already tested it in a car by this point at the time of recording, so yeah, pretty good. Then comes the trackpad. I don't like the size or shape of the trackpad because I feel like it is maybe just a little bit too small for my liking. The Bridge Pro Plus keyboard has a giant trackpad that actually resembles that of the MacBooks, so it would have been very nice to have something closer to that. And if not, something bigger in general would just have been a lot nicer. But with that aside, this is hands down the best trackpad that you can get for your iPad because gestures are incredibly fluid and smooth. It works automatically with iPadOS. You don't have to fiddle around with Bluetooth or anything like that. Not to mention, it is also incredibly responsive. The clicking is also satisfying enough, and it is pretty nice that you can click or press on the trackpad just about anywhere on it. Like, it works on the top, on the bottom, in the middle, anywhere. So that's actually pretty cool. And I do like that quality of life improvement. So battery life here is actually going to be an interesting story. It's powered through the pins on the iPad, so it is more power efficient than using Bluetooth. At least that's what you would think at first. This means that it does still use more energy from your iPad, and it won't last up to the 10 hours it's rated for. That is the iPad, of course. Though I have noticed the battery draining quickly before my eyes, and that's not really the nicest thing to see here. Is it really this draining? I mean, it's not terrible, but but it does affect the battery life more than I expected. So when it comes to complaints, I do have a couple. I like to draw a lot, and in fact, I like to work on animations on my iPad Pro as well. But I can't fold this flat. It only has 2 positions for using it. And sure, I could take off the iPad, which is pretty easy to do, and place it on top of the case to draw, but then my iPad isn't really secured anymore. Not really a fan of that aspect whatsoever, because if they included just one more seam, maybe somewhere just like around the upper portion of it, I probably would have been able to fold it all the way flat, or at the very least still have like a little bit of inclination left. It's a little bit hard to explain what I'm trying to talk about here, but that just would have made it a lot better. So I think it is kind of an odd choice. But I will say that because of that, I have to carry another thin case around with me that actually folds in the way that I would want it to, but it's not a keyboard case. And yeah, I mean, this kind of affects the portability aspect quite a bit if I have to carry 2 cases around. But then again, I don't expect that many people to really have that as a complaint, because you can actually put quite a bit of pressure with your stylus on the hinge, like on the iPad Pro, and it will still take it pretty well, and you can still grab it and still work on some pieces that way. But I much prefer to work on a flat surface if possible, and that just kind of messes with that aspect there. So I would have liked to see a way of actually being able to flatten this keyboard case. It would have made it so ideal. And also the battery drainage is a little bit weird for something like this. Obviously the battery can't last forever on the keyboard since all it's doing is just drawing power from the iPad. But after some time, I've been noticing the battery on my iPad dropping noticeably faster, which I was not really expecting with this model, so I wasn't too happy or too thrilled about that. So in conclusion, I underestimated this keyboard, but in all fairness, it deserves a very critical look if it's going to cost as much as it does. I said this in my review of the M1 iPad Pro, but this keyboard costs a sizable chunk more in addition to the iPad's already high price tag at $350. I don't think that this accessory in particular is the only option for the iPad, and if I hadn't had to get this because of doing so much waiting for my bridge keyboard to get here, and it's still not here actually at the time of recording, then we wouldn't be here talking about it today. This is a great keyboard with a great trackpad and a very cute and sleek design, I have to say. So I do like it, but it doesn't let me use the iPad to its fullest potential with its very limited positioning or viewing angles, I suppose, in that sense, and I don't love that aspect about it. So would I recommend it? If you have $350 to spend on this, then I don't think you're going to regret it if you end up going with this option. It is a very good option for that matter. But if you're tight on your budget and have been eyeing this one, then I do think that you're better off just looking at other options, because this is just a lot of money to drop on what is essentially just an accessory, especially when you're still settling even when paying such a premium. And well, yeah, that has been my verdict after testing it for some time now, and I hope that this review was useful to you. And if you do have any questions, then do make sure to leave them down in the comments, as I always do read through all of them. But I also wanted to say that I am going to be leaving affiliate links down to Amazon in the description if you are still interested in getting one of these. I'm also going to be leaving linked a couple of other ones I would recommend instead if you are going to be looking at other keyboards of a lower budget, like in case you don't really have that much money to spend on it right off the bat. However, if you are dead set on this keyboard case, then I am going to be leaving a link to ABUNDA directly, because ABUNDA is going to be actually a great financing service to help you like pay for these things just bit by bit. And it is going to be a method that is not going to require a credit card from you whatsoever. So links to all of these are going to be down below, and if you end up using any of these links, then I do get a small commission that does support the channel quite a bit, so I would really appreciate that quite a bit. And also I would like to give a very special thanks to all of my patrons, beginning with the tier 3 patrons, of course. Those are going to be Joma, Sara, Wazel, and Omar. Thank you so much for all of your support, because it really does go a very long way. Also to the rest of the patrons, the tier 2s coming right up. And this is super important. I would just like to give a very special thanks to all of our patrons, which are going to be listed right here on the screen. Again, a massive thanks to you all for supporting us to help us create the kind of content that we bring to you on a day-to-day basis. And thank you so much for supporting the Tech Summit podcast as well. And just remember that if you would like to be a part of this community too, and then do make sure to check out the links to our Patreon, where you don't only get bonus episodes of our podcast, but you also get automatically entered into one of our monthly giveaways of a tech product that we have reviewed that is of at least $50 in value or higher. So links to that down below. And don't forget to follow me on the rest of my social media, like my Instagram and my Twitch. where I do stream fairly often. But with that said, this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you for watching, and I will be seeing you all later. Enjoy.